Now you may be wondering how a jigsaw, a plastic bag from the grocery store, and a tea candle can make your modeling more hassle-free, but I'm about to show you, so stick around. I got so tired of lids getting stuck on jars, I looked for a solution and I found something that I think really helps. You get a plastic bag that you get from the grocery store every time you go. Make sure it's doubled over. There's always two parts, the one side and the other. You're going to cut them both at the same time. Just take some scissors, cut out a square a little bigger than the mouth of the jar. Then the next time you have to close the jar up, take the plastic, doubled up, put it over top, and then screw the lid on. It screws on just fine. The plastic is so thin. And what happens is, when you unscrew it the next time, there's no way it can get stuck because the layers are separate. If one layer gets stuck to the top and another layer to the bottom, it will still open up because the layers won't get stuck to each other. So that's a great trick that's saved me lots of headaches. Speaking of paint, got tired of trying to shake my paints and finding out I didn't shake them well enough. And so I got my jigsaw and took off the base plate, which usually fits right on the base of the jigsaw, because you need more room for the blade to travel for this tip. Then I found some corrugated plastic conduit, really cheap usually at Lowe's or someplace, and that's the right diameter. That was easy to find for like Vallejo acrylics that I use, and tape it to the blade. Normally I would do better than this, but I'm trying to do it with one hand here. So tape it to the blade till it's nice and secure. Then you've got a bottle of paint, fits right inside, and when you turn on the jigsaw, the paint is shaken. And what I've done is then just with some zip ties strapped it to the leg of my workbench. It's always available upside down. I just put in the paint and give it a quick shake. Now I've wanted a way to make sure straight edges were perfectly straight. Either you're taking off the sprue marks where it was connected to sprues, or you just made a cut and it wasn't quite straight. I used to use a sanding block. Stiff rubber feels like a real flat surface, but it's still easy to accidentally roll the edges when you're going back and forth. It's easy to sort of very slightly roll the corners without even knowing it until you put it up against another sheet. So to prevent that, I made this jig. Just MDF, medium density fiberboard at a 90-degree angle using a square. Then I found adhesive sandpaper, which you can get in rolls. Found it online at wooded supply stores. And take the piece of plastic and you can rub it against the edge and it helps make sure it's absolutely square. Even better when you can place it on the flat surface, then it's 90 degrees. It's not beveled in both this direction and that direction. You're sure it's square to the other sides. If it gets filled with plastic, I've also used it for plaster walls. The sandpaper gets filled. You can just use a brass or wire brush and it cleans it out. And if need be, you can make an even longer one. This one's probably about 4 feet long for very long pieces. That's a big help. How many times have you used Superglue and you want to use it on several different joints or contact areas and it just dries out before you can finish? You might use a toothpick to put it on and so you can't just take it out of the bottle and glob it on. That's way too much. So you put out a little bit and then it dries up. Turns out, saw someone mention that if you put super glue on a candle wax, and this is a little tea candle, you can get it almost everywhere, department store, put the super glue on there and it lasts a whole lot longer before it dries up. So you can just dab the toothpick or whatever it is, put it on the parts, and it will last for a long part of your session. Turns out I lay the toothpick down and it might get stuck to something on my board. So to avoid that, I just took my wire snippers and cut a little V in opposite sides of the tea candle, because it's very thin metal, and then that becomes a cradle for the toothpick. My last tip has to do with making the appearance of torn vinyl. I use it in models such as this, where I wanted the seats to look like they were worn, and just painting on the color of maybe the foam underneath the seats just didn't look realistic enough for me. I wanted something that had actual texture and parts that were peeling up. And so what I did was used latex rubber. First you paint the part in the color you want to see underneath. Then you take latex rubber. Just instead of the masking, the difference is the mask will come completely off, but the latex rubber, you can decide what parts come off and other parts of it will stay on and make the flaky look of peeling vinyl. So once that latex rubber is dried, paint the final coat. In this case it was brown, and then just scrape it a little bit with my knife until I get the marks that I want, and it leaves little raised areas of vinyl, which is perfect for the weathered look of a real seat. So I hope these tips come in handy for you, and keep watching here for more.